ladies and gentlemen, SideStrafe here with the first ever live strafing run on twitch.tv, and joining me, of course, Bismarck. How you doing, my friend?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the first time, of course, doing a live version of the Strafing Run, which is a kind of a vlog series that I've been running on my channel for some time now. I know not a lot of people catch it, but it's just my way of keeping people up to date with kind of industry news and things that I'm up to with the channel, the live stream, what games I'm playing and whatnot. But I thought that I'd switch it up a little bit and do a live version of the Strafing Run. So today's session's not really us playing any games. Think of this as more of a podcast. The subject is, of course, going to be War Thunder, which is why you see it in the background, but mostly just, you know, thoughtful discussion, critique, and whatnot with an audience. So hopefully this is something that you guys can appreciate, as we're going to be spending some time just kind of, you know, nitpicking and, you know, discussing the good, the bad, and the ugly and whatnot. But so welcome, everybody. Hopefully you can get your snacks ready, because I think we're going to get into this. What do you think, Biz?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
The time has come.
Indeed. Finally, since a year, I've waited for this opportunity.
So this will also be made available on the YouTube channel. And so for those that miss it, you can direct them to that once that's up, perhaps later on in the day or tomorrow at the latest. But anyway, so if you guys are in the chat and you want to help us out a little bit, we might have some newcomers to the stream, and they might question, you know, what's going on, what are we playing, or why aren't we playing. If you could please direct them to, or at least answer that question for them and say, hey, it's more of a podcast type thing going on, and it's more of a discussion. Let them know what's going on. Much appreciated while we're in the middle of our talks. But anyways, I think we're going to kind of start out with, you know, where War Thunder came from, what the developer's original intention was when making this game. Now, Biz, you've obviously been playing this game a lot longer than I have, especially from its Air Force's inception. Did you play from the very beginning when it like first came out, or did you take a little while to get into it?
No, I didn't play it from the very beginning. I started playing January last year. I think it was still in closed beta or something. My memory is a bit mushy on that point. I first actually saw it on Jingles's, Mighty Jingles YouTube channel. I hadn't played flight simulators for quite some time by that point. Basically something I gave up when I went into my older teens, because it wasn't cool at school. I was one of those guys, yeah, that let himself be influenced by you know, other people. And but after I kind of went into my 20s, I started to have an interest in it again, and along came a couple of videos by Mighty Jingles, who I've been following for World of Tanks, and that's when I saw the game, and I kind of jumped on board it immediately after I saw it. And it was promising. It was really, really promising. Just, you know, hearing what the developers had planned. They did a couple of Q&A sessions on TeamSpeak back then. It was quite small, and the forums were very, well, compared to now, they were quite civilized.
Right.
With lots of people that had a background in flight simulators, giving feedback and talking about planes and so on. You had very lively discussions about planes there, but also very, especially compared to now, very educated discussions.
Right.
With people really exchanging information. So often also, you know, I don't want to make it sound as if it was clean. People were, you know, going at each other quite hardly sometimes as well. But it was nowhere to the point where it is now sometimes with the forum on War Thunder, where people are really, you know, some of them don't even know anything, but they're just going at each other. And
I think that's part of the problems with things becoming more popular. Obviously, you bring in more people, and then they're going to get into fights with each other. But For me, yeah, it was one of those things where obviously coming from a World of Tanks background, War Thunder popped up, and with Wargaming.net working on World of Warplanes, a lot of people were like, you know, hey, SideStrafe, check out War Thunder, let us know what you think about this game. But at the time, it was one of those things for me where it was, well, I'm not really much of a pilot. I never really got into flight sims of the World War II variety. In my younger days, I played, you know, I played Jane's Longbow, which was, you know, the Apache helicopter simulation, stuff like that. But I never was too into flight simulations, even though they were quite abundant growing up with the PC times. Falcon 4.0 is a major flight sim that comes to mind that a lot of people were playing back then. But never really got into them too much. And for me, it was always just kind of a fun thing if there was some sort of flight game to play, then just something to enjoy. But for me, it was always about ground combat, infantry, and armor tactics. I always loved that. So that's why War Thunder didn't initially appeal to me until maybe much later, when it was already gaining speed and or becoming a lot more popular. And I enjoyed it, but I would say that my entry to it was, you know, simple. You know, it was really, I'm of course naive coming in. I jump into the first thing that stares me in the face, which is of course arcade mode, because it's just like, oh, okay, I don't know anything. I'm gonna go do this. That's what everybody's doing, right? And I think that's gonna end up being the source of our problems, is that generally you're getting people that don't really know much about it, and they're just going to the first thing that hits them in the face, and they're not really willing to experiment outside of that bubble, which is why the popularity of realistic and simulator is...
Oh yeah, especially simulator, but you know, there are other issues on with simulator as well that I guess we're going to talk about a little bit later. But you know, speaking on, you know, arcade battle, I think that's one of the beautiful things about War Thunder, actually, that it's a new game that is easy to play, especially in arcade battle, but it introduces people to flight sims. I think that's something that is actually one of the positive externalities out of this game, because I've heard from quite a few people now, and you know, I've been in contact with a few of the German simulator battle clans lately, who have told me that now, because of War Thunder, they went from arcade to realistic battle, then to simulator battle, and of course they had to get a joystick for that. But now they're looking into even more realistic, because, well, simulator battle, it might call itself simulator, but it's very, very basic as a simulator. So they're looking into IL-2 Battle of Stalingrad, they're looking into DCS, they're looking into, you know, some of the older games as well, Aces High and Cliffs of Dover. So that's quite a positive thing, I think you could say, about War Thunder. But it does mean, I mean, I don't think a lot of people will make that jump. A lot of people will stay in arcade battle. A lot of people will stay, or not even go further than a realistic battle. And you know, that's probably where some of the problem starts coming in, because various game modes obviously, you know, have less people, and out of an economic standpoint, it makes more sense for Gaijin to focus on the community that's biggest, and that is just arcade.
Right. I think that's where again, the problem may lie, in that even though they appear to be an independent developer, that there's somebody at the top of that chain that's saying, look, we got to make money here. You know, we're not doing well in this area. We need to make more. How are we going to do that? And they're going to look to see where the bulk of their customers are, which, you know, they've got the numbers. They see how many people are playing each mode, and they can, and we all know that most of these people, we can see here right now online, over 50,000 people online. We can pretty much guarantee that most of them are playing arcade mode, whether it's ground forces or air forces, because the amount of time it takes to get into a realistic battle, and even, you know, worse, a simulator battle, is it's up there sometimes. In many cases, you have to just give up and maybe choose a lower tier or a different nation to get into something, especially if it's ground forces, because there's only the two nations right now. But I think a lot of people are also coming from games by Wargaming that, you know, like World of Tanks or World of Warplanes, and they're thinking, can I get an upgraded experience? You know, they look at this and they see a beautiful game engine, beautiful plane models and animations, a really nice game engine with all the bells and whistles. That it obviously in many respects looks a lot better than what Wargaming's been able to put out, even though they have been updating the poly count on their tanks and things as of late. They are trying to keep up with the technology, adding physics and things like that. So that's nice to see. But War Thunder still, I think, was the pretty package, the nicely wrapped package that people want to get into. But then they get into it and they think, well, this game's nice looking, but I kind of wish it played like my other game. And I think that's where you end up with a problem. And I especially saw that in Ground Forces Beta, where we ran into people that just wanted a better looking World of Tanks. And so their influence overpowered the influence of the minority, which is us, the realistic or simulator battle players.
Yeah. Well, there's also that question that had popped up since Ground Forces went into this. You know, basically since Ground Forces was announced with the closed beta and the invites you had to get for it, and you had to make a certain amount of achievements to get invites or to have a higher chance of getting invites and so on. And I think that also brought in the wrong crowd from the early get-go into Ground Forces, and you know, those people that provided feedback, because I guess I wouldn't say that all young people are, you know, less educated on the subject, because I mean I'm myself, I'm 24. I'm not that old, but I spend a lot of time reading stuff, and if I do it, I'm pretty sure other people do it as well. But you had these achievements that you had to get, which were just horrendous, and you had to get, I don't know how many of them, to have a high chance of actually getting in there. And a lot of the people that used to play simulators, or that, especially when it came to air combat, you know, they're in their 40s, they're in their 50s, they started 20 years ago, and they just don't have the time to do all those achievements. And if you say to your community, right, you have to play a lot of our game to be able to join the beta, instead of saying, right, we need people that, you know, we're gonna focus on people that know their stuff, then you're attracting the wrong crowd, in my opinion.
No, it's true. I mean, and I think part of what I really want to talk about today is expectations in anything in life. It's one of those things where, you know, what are people coming here to do? What are they coming to play? It's like seeing a movie, for example. You can even use Transformers as an example, okay? Now it's one of those things where I grew up with Transformers and G.I. Joe many moons ago, and when I think of a Transformers movie, I want a live-action cartoon, which is pretty much what I get. But a lot of people out there, they want to see character development, romance, in-depth, you know, story, and they're disappointed because they have the wrong expectation of what a Transformer or Michael Bay movie is. So when I think about World of Tanks, my expectation has been set, or World of Warplanes, any of those, and we're going to make a lot of comparisons between Wargaming.net and Gaijin, but because they're closely related and directly competitors. But I know what my expectation is because Wargaming said it. They said, we're making an arcade game. This is not realistic. We're not making a simulator. That's been clear. They had advertisements about it. We know. Okay, got it, good. Take it or leave it. That's the kind of dev they are. Fine. I can respect that. Gaijin, however, set up an expectation for people in that, okay, here's your arcade mode, but here is something that at the time they called historical battles, and that they also called simulator battles. So when we got into those modes, we had an expectation of realism, of historical accuracy. And over the years, it seems like that's slowly being removed in order to broaden their game modes to cater towards a different audience. Once again, we're the minority, so we're not their big spenders. We're not their main, we're not their target audience. We're not going to bring them the most income. So clearly, a lot of decisions are being made to get, I think, maybe more of the arcade gamers into some of the other modes. For example, in Ground Forces, we have, you know, respawns if you're in a medium or light tank. Whereas I would think in something that's supposed to be realistic or simulator, you wouldn't have such a thing. You know, damage modeling varies patch by patch. You know, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. There are issues there, but you know, there's all these little things, and I'm sure you can speak on this in great detail in regards to just the flight modeling and
Oh God.
mechanics.
What kind of flight modeling? I mean, um, yeah. Actually, if I start talking about flight models, I'm probably not gonna stop. But it's been talked about a lot, I guess, and a lot of people already know the problems that existed there. There were varying contracts, if there were contracts, but there were varying, what's the word I'm looking for here? Conditions for various flight modelers who were working on them. And some of them had a good deal, as in fact, some of them had a great deal, maybe even a too good deal. And others had a pretty bad deal. And couple of, I think this was in summer 2013, so half a year into playing War Thunder, we had the German planes. They weren't perfectly flight modeled yet. I mean, they didn't have control stiffening as they have now, and the Bf-109s were still diving better than the 190s for some reason. But from most flight models, they were pretty good if, when it came to accuracy compared to the rest of the game. And the flight modeler of those two planes, he basically left. He pulled the plug and he said, you know, I can't work here anymore. And that had various reasons. Not all of them were purely Gadget's fault, must be said here as well. He came back then for a couple of months working on these planes, and then he left again because he said, you know, as far as I know, he basically couldn't work there. He would give the flight models to Gadget only to see them being pulled apart, being not fully implemented as they are, which is, I guess, also understandable, because if you get a really, really good flight model for a certain plane that has control stiffening, that has all the shebang in it, and you set that plane up against planes that don't have these physical limitations, then that plane is not going to be as effective, because it just, you know, it flies as it should while the other planes don't. And it's limited by physics, whereas the other planes don't. And this was a big thing back in Simulator Battle, because you had the German planes that would stall out, while the Russian planes wouldn't stall. And, you know, in a fight, obviously that is a huge difference. You could go to the limit and above the limit with certain aircraft, while with other you couldn't. And that made fights very one-sided once it came down to, you know, a big, tight dogfight where it's
Right.
really important that you keep yourself just above that stall limit at times. And yeah, it's just something that every time and again you get into these fights with planes that don't have these basic stall characteristics and these basic flight model characteristics, and you do everything that you can, and still he beats you, even though he shouldn't. You know, he should have stalled out long ago. He should have, you know, he should be able to pull those maneuvers. He shouldn't be able to stay on you. And as somebody who craves for realism, and who went into your full real battle, as it was back in the day, and then simulator battle now, you go in there with an expectation that all this stuff that you see in arcade and maybe even realistic battle is not going to be there. And yeah, that's just not the case. But then again, you know, you have 300 planes, you need 300 flight models, and that's also a big issue there. And I that's why I'm also critical of them introducing more and more planes, which is obviously something I guess they do to attract the crowd and to you know, to attract people with, you know, we've got the Horten 229 lining up now. That's a special plane, German stealth bomber, even though it never was conceptualized as a stealth plane. And it's just these things that keep popping up, new content here, new content there, and you still see these mistakes they have in their game modes that just don't get fixed. And I have talked about this in the past as well. You have in simulator battle, you still have pilots that in bombers are able to pilot the plane while at the same time being able to control the gunners in third-person view with mouse aim. It doesn't make sense. You know, how in simulator battle where the realism is supposed to be as high as possible, how can you pilot your bomber, your B-17, while you're using the rear gunner, and you have a third-person perspective? That just doesn't make sense. yet it's still in there, and it's just, you know, there's no testing required there to tell you this doesn't work. But I guess with the simulator battle community being as small as it is at the moment when it comes to aircraft, not when it comes to tanks, I guess there's a sizable number there, but when it comes to aircraft, there is just there's no number there anymore, and it has dropped in importance significantly. And as more as it drops in importance, the less people will actually fly. And we saw the repercussions of that a couple of weeks ago when they said, well, we're going to make changes to simulator battle, and eventually it's just going to be mixed battle with ground forces, and that's it. Oh, and events, of course, but yeah.
Now it's tough again, because it comes down to what Gaijin originally wanted to create. What was their original vision? It seems like their original vision was to provide 3 solid modes that would cater to a wide variety of individuals. And, you know, and again, we've always said, you know, we don't care what they do in arcade. We don't care. I mean, they could shoot rainbows out of their butts if they want. I just don't care. Do whatever you want in that mode. Have fun. I'm fine with people doing, you know, whatever they want in a mode that's built for them. It's cool. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own interests. I'm not saying that the realism or the simulator people are the best. I don't care. We were, you know, we grew up. For some reason, something influenced us to like a certain style of play. That's all there is to it. I'm glad that people are different. However, the majority prefers, you know, arcade, as we've said. Now, why it seems that those things are seeping into the other modes, you know, why it seems, you know, and again, I think it's just coming down to demand, you know, greed, needing money. You know, somebody may be at the head saying, look, we're not making this. We need to get more people. We need to spread things out across these modes. Not enough people are doing this. It's not worth it. You know, one day, I mean, we've already lost historical battles as it once was. It's no longer, it's now, what is it, alternate reality, they call it? Or
some of it, yeah.
I mean, so
some of the battles are basically, you know, Soviets against US, US against Britain in some kind of test invasion of Okinawa or something.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
So beyond that, you have to go to events. You have to go to events mode to kind of get something that's somewhat realistic, or historically accurate. Now, I don't think we have that for tanks yet. I think it's just for planes. I don't think there's any armored events, unless they've added that recently. I could be wrong. But the question is, I think, you know, when, you know, how far are they going to go? When does it stop? How much are they going to dumb down certain things? What game do they now want to make? You know, they're never going to compete with wargaming.net. So they almost need to say, look, here's what we want to do. Let's make this. Let's not worry about the other guy, because they already dominate the planet in regards to a tank arcade game. They've got Russia alone could support wargaming.net for years to come. So there's no point in trying to fight against that. I don't see why. I mean, because we all know with Wargaming trying to add their own historical mode, that flopped. Nobody plays it. You can't get into a match. Maybe once in a while you get lucky, somebody's playing, or somebody's going to have to organize an event to get everybody to just queue up at the same time, which I believe Jingles himself has done from time to time. But so in my opinion, Gaijin needed to step up and say, look, okay, that guy's already making this arcade game. We need to focus on, you know, a different type of title. Here's the arcade mode. Sure, there it is. But our focus needs to be on these other things. But it seems like it's the other way around, of course. They're going to keep including things that cater towards a target audience. And that might even include looking at fan favorites. So if a plane such as you know, the Mustang is obviously very popular, you know, have you seen instances where they're going to buff up a plane that just is selling well, or buff up a plane that they know a lot of people want or think is amazing, you know, or obviously there's been, you know, so many, the list can go on and on of things that are obviously broken in regards to flight modeling. We can see the tactics in regards to introducing new planes before old ones are fixed. We can see where their priorities are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I was a developer, if I had all the time in the world, which most devs don't, if it was an indie thing, if it was a Kickstarter project where I could say, look, let's do this, you know, introduce 2 vehicles at a time, make sure they're perfectly balanced against each other, and then once those are polished 100%, you move on to the next set. Obviously, it doesn't seem like they're doing that. This is a free-to-play. Free-to-plays often run into issues where, look, we gotta sell content. You're not paying $60 for the game, so you have to sell planes and tanks. So get more out, get more out, get more out, and that means other things tend to suffer. So,
I mean, this is one of those things that is very interesting about War Thunder and flight models, is that we've basically went through phases where planes had a flight model that you couldn't even call it a flight model. You would call it a space model, I guess, because it really just did not obey the basic laws of physics in any way, shape, or form. You would have these planes that could climb like a space shuttle. You had, you know, you have so many examples of it. Back when I joined, it was the LA5 FN. And oh, that's interesting. The LA5 FN also has a premium version. And it came to the point where sometimes in realistic battles, you had a full Russian team of LA5 FNs, and then you had a German team full of LA5 FNs. And it was just a space battle, basically, in lower orbit. And then the LA5 was suddenly fixed, and the price was buffed to God knows what. And then I believe it was the Corsair, and oh, the Corsair also has a premium plane. And then you have now the P-47 that is also, especially, this is I think more a problem of battle tier rating than actual flight model, although it also goes at God knows what speed without any control stiffening. And that plane also has a premium version. So you always have these bizarre cases where a plane has a weird flight model and also a premium version of that plane exists. However, those are not the only cases. Of course, there's the Beaufighter. You know, people used to call it Broken Fighter. Now it's flying fine. Maybe they nerfed it even a bit too much. Then there was the A-20, the A-20G that was able to outturn a BF-109, which is absolutely God knows impossible. You just look at both of those planes, you can tell which one is the better turner by looking at it and thinking a little bit about it. And you know, you had people that had flight sim experience for years seeing that kind of stuff, and they just didn't see the appeal in the game anymore, because of course these planes get abused. They get abused by players, they get abused by YouTubers, they get abused by everybody. And it's just that really hits you if you're craving for a realistic experience. And this is where Gadget should have made a big line between arcade battle, what is now called realistic battle, and simulator battle. And when they should have said, we will not deviate from this line. But they have deviated from that line, especially when it comes to arcade battle and realistic battle. Realistic battle, a lot of people just call it Arcade Plus now. I still think there's quite a distinction between those modes, but I can see where they're coming from when they say it's Arcade Plus. And if they had that strong line between those modes, they would have said, we do not deviate from these lines, and that also means that we have to make concessions for these game modes. For example, for simulator battle, they could have said in the beginning, okay, for simulator battle, you can only use a certain number of aircraft. You cannot use all the 100, 200, 300 aircrafts that are in the game at the moment. You only can use, I don't know, 2 planes per tier in that game mode, because those are the planes that have a good flight model. You could have done that, and I think the simulator battle community back then would have appreciated that, because they were craving for a realistic experience and not something where you can see one plane after the other simply refusing to obey basic physics. And that is just something that I would have liked Gadget to do, but they didn't do that. Maybe the idea didn't come to them. Maybe they had some restrictions in terms of programming. I don't know, I'm not a programmer. But that's something that you see now with a very popular game in the flight community, which is Rise of Flight. It's a First World War flight simulator, and they bring out new content every day, and you buy these new planes. You basically have to pay, I think, $6 per plane, and they bring them out one by one. They started with a low set of planes, 3 or 4 aside for the Allies and for the Germans, and they just casually build it up, making sure that the flight models are correct. You have IL-2 Battle of Stalingrad that's coming out. It has a steep asking price. There's the deluxe package, which gives you all the planes that are currently announced, plus 2 extra planes, which is the LA-5 and the Focke-Wulf 190A free, and you have to pay $100 for that thing. But they're building that game up slowly, and they have said that they will not bring one of those planes into multiplayer unless it flies to the degree where they're happy with it in terms of flight models. And they have some of these planes in the game in single player where you can fly around with it, give feedback, but it's not in the multiplayer. And that's, I think, also something that Gaijin should have done with Simulator Battle. Back then it was called Full Wheel Battle. And that would have helped a lot. And that would have kept the community engaged with War Thunder. That would have kept the old guys, the guys that have 20 years of flight simulator experience. And you might ask the question, why do these people matter? You know, they're elitist. They're joystick elitist. You know, they look down on mouse aimers. Yeah, some of them do, of course. I mean, it's a simulator battle community. There is always going to be a little bit of elitism, but you had a great deal of people that were sacrificing their time, that were going through great effort to give feedback to Gaijin, to say, look, we've been playing flight sims for 20 years. This is our experience, and these are the mistakes that you're making, in our opinion. And nobody listened to them, or maybe some of them were listened to, but not a lot. And we have lost these people. They're gone. They're forever gone. Like, War Thunder is spoiled for them forever. They don't give a shit about this game anymore. They just hear the term War Thunder, they roll their eyes, and they hop into a flight sim that actually works. And yeah, it's when you look down on the numbers, that's a small crowd. I don't even think they would be 5% of the War Thunder community. But these people had experience, they had knowledge, and they had motivation to make a new flight sim, because the flight sim genre has been dead for a couple of years, and something new came up with great graphics and so on. And it's just, you lost these people, and with them you lost a lot of potential and a lot of potential knowledge that you could have acquired for your game development, and that makes me sad to quite a large degree.
I mean, I hear it. It was a little bit more difficult for me coming in. You know, I had first met Ram JB, and then you a little after that, and that's when I was, you know, getting in. I was like, oh, you know, it'd be helpful to have somebody that, you know, knows what's going on. And but I always remember there was always, you know, like, oh well, there's these problems here, and for me, I'm naive to planes. I don't know anything about them. You know, I don't have an understanding of how they're supposed to work. And I think, again, that's the problem, is that you're getting people, there's too many people that don't know how they're supposed to work. Yeah. So the game is, if you're naive, this game is amazing. It is amazing. Absolutely. It's beautiful. You know, sounds are kind of so-so in some areas, but I mean, it's smooth. You know, the levels are beautiful, especially a lot of the arcade fictional ones. They're, you know, gorgeous mountains and things like that.
Yep.
But if you're not, if you're naive, oh, it doesn't matter. It's just the greatest flight sim ever, and it's free to play. You know, but when you start learning, like, there comes a point where I start to, like, get more in depth. Okay, SideStrafe, try out historical battles, which is what it was called at the time. I was like, okay, you're gonna like that because you like realistic. I go in there, I'm like, oh wow, you actually have to fly to the objective, and it's nation versus nation, you know, true accuracy, and it gets a little harder to fly and targeting and things like that. And then, wow, this is pretty cool. And then but then you realize it's like, well, there's not as many people playing it, and now I don't know what causes one person to jump to the next thing, but yeah, I think it's just, I think it also comes down to disinformation, and that's where YouTubers and streamers come into play sometimes. In a way, even though we're not hired on necessarily by anybody. Well, some people might be, but you know, I do this. This is my hobby. This is what I do for fun. I still feel like I have a job to inform people. And so if I make a video about something, I'm going to turn to this pile of books next to me, open them up, and say, hey, okay, let me read about this tank before I start talking about it, make sure I remember everything. Let me look at this, you know, ballistics information. Let me look at the actual speed and the armor thickness and this and that. Whereas, okay, I know what's realistic now. But then, let's face it, we are going to get people out there that are equally naive. Doesn't make them bad people, but maybe they become popular and they give out the wrong information, and then it doesn't matter anymore. It's just like, oh, well, this guy said this, so it doesn't really, you know, this is how this is supposed to be. And then, or I saw this on the History Channel and this
Oh
documentary
God.
said this and this and this and this. And I watched, what's that show? Flight or Fighter?
Don't
Yeah.
don't say it. Don't say it. Don't
Yes.
please.
Anyway, so there's obviously a lot of, you know, whether it's media, whether it's YouTubers, whether it's streamers, there are people and companies out there providing wrong information, which also affects the gamer that's coming in not knowing anything. And if I didn't have you guys to tell me, you know, that plane's broken, watch out for that, you know, oh, what's on your 6? That, okay, run away, because, you know, that thing's going to outturn you even though it shouldn't. You know, we kept running into that, and I started to understand over time, and I didn't want to believe it because you see all the good, and then with Ground Forces, of course, coming out, you're like, you know, please don't mess this up. You hear, okay, maybe it's a separate development team within Gaijin. Hopefully they'll, and for a few patches within closed beta or alpha, it was pretty good, and we were all excited. You know, I remember playing with you and Ram, and we were like, this is really good. This is, you know, this could. And a few patches later, it's like, and it's gone. It's like,
Yeah, that's what I had. I mean, I've been literally debating with myself whether I should put the first impressions video that I have unlisted here, not make it available for public anymore, because the game back then and the enthusiasm I had for Ground Forces was just gone after a couple of patches, and it just, you know, I didn't want to have that first impression out there telling people, you know, this is going to be amazing, when in fact at this point in time, a couple of weeks later, that wasn't the case anymore. You know, they were doing stuff that was just, I just couldn't understand what was going on. And I've taken a big step back from tanks. I only played once or twice with a couple of people that make it fun for me. You know, the game Tanks itself isn't really fun for me. What makes it fun is playing with other people, and they make some weird shenanigans, and I just laugh, and that's what keeps me going for a couple of games, and then I quit. Because I just cannot stand any more problems in War Thunder when I see all those problems we have in the Air Forces. But yeah, like what you said in the beginning, that some people, they just don't know. They come into the game and they don't know anything, and that's perfectly fine. And I guess War Thunder in some way also has increased interest in World War II aviation, and that's what I said in the beginning of the podcast, is some people actually make the jump from arcade to realistic to simulator battle to further flight sims, and an increased interest in how these planes actually performed. And, you know, they want to really learn about them. They want to learn about the history of the development of that aircraft in real life, how it flew, was flown by whom, how it performed, and so forth. And that is something that has the potential of happening, but with most people, I guess that won't happen. Or if it does happen, they will go to, you know, History Channel, or they will go to Wikipedia. Wikipedia, by the way, for anybody who's watching, I don't want to talk down Wikipedia. The Wikipedia is great to just get the basic facts about aircraft, but if you really want to know anything about an aircraft, you have to get a good book about it, and that there is just no way around it. But this was something that I had also talked about with Ram JB in one of the podcasts, and I said, you know, some people go into this game and they see a Beaufighter and they see a Bf 109, and the Beaufighter outturns the Bf 109, and they think that's reality. You know, and he said, no, that's not possible. People will have to look at these aircraft, and they will have to understand immediately by just looking at the aircraft that that's not possible. And in some ways, I agree, but then I guess I think back to myself when I was starting to play World of Tanks. I didn't know much about tanks. Yeah, I was one of those people that thought the Sherman was horrible and the Tiger was amazing. And I had always questioned myself, you know, why is the lower glacis so weak? Is that really what's going on? How is that possible? I've never heard about this in the documentaries that I watched, but I believed it for some time. And then I opened the book and I just looked at the actual armor values. I was like, this isn't real. This is game mechanic. But I guess that step of actually opening a book and informing yourself, that is what's lacking for a lot of people, even though it's something that you would think is obvious. And especially to a lot of people that know a lot of the facts and the figures and that are very knowledgeable in tanks or aircraft, they have an issue or a problem trying to get into the shoes of somebody who's new, even though they were new at some point as well. They just, it's been years ago, and they just can't get into their shoes and understand what the problems are for some people in terms of understanding what they actually see and what is true and what is not true, and why the programming is wrong, and things just aren't able to work that way in real life. But you know, that's just some of the problems that these games create. And if the more and the longer you have these issues, the more people will think that, well, the BF 109 dies better than the fuckable 190. That's like the petty issue that I still have, even though it's been fixed for some time. But I used to go crazy on the forum on this. I just read a thread on somebody arguing about that, and I would leave immediately because I just couldn't stand it anymore.
I mean, I've had those issues on the armor front as well, because it gets to the point where people will think that a tank is better than another tank in real life because of what they played in World of Tanks, and and they will fight you about it. They're like, no, this tank will tear that tank. Oh yeah, this did this and this and this. I'm like, are you serious? You're using World of Tanks to cite history at this point. I mean,
yes,
they've become armchair generals, military historians from playing around in World of Tanks. You know, an extremely arcade game with invisible enemies. I mean, and it makes me fear for you know, the planet Earth to a certain degree, just because, you know, one day these people will govern our nations. I don't know. I mean, it's sad that that's the thing, but I mean, again, I think all that just gets overlooked for the almighty, you know, dollar. I mean, it's going to come down to like, and again, guys, game development is hard. It's difficult.
Yes.
I mean, programming especially, you know, art is one thing. Obviously, there's a lot of great talented artists out here. I mean, just looking at some of these planes, I mean, they're beautiful, but when it comes to, you know, just getting ballistic properties, I mean, the stuff that happens in reality, to get it to work like that in a game, you know, it's not easy. And trying to research hundreds of planes and tanks and get them all working like they did in life, especially when you can't easily just go and jump in a plane and fly around and test it. Some, sure, maybe you can get a pilot to take you up in a two-seater and kind of get a general idea. But a lot of devs, they can't do that, or they won't do that, or they won't pay, or it's too expensive or something or whatever. And you don't always have, let's face it, there aren't a lot of tanks in working order anymore, and so it's hard to, you know, to get actual information. And so it's not easy to balance all of these things. But again, I think it's come down to these developers have created their own problems because they decided to make a free-to-play with hundreds of units that they need to balance. Whereas if you were playing a game that was a $60 flat rate, you would say, okay, here's what we got for now. If you want more later, we'll do an expansion. But, you know, these are balanced. Boop, they're in game. That, you know, that's it. And, you know, I think that IL, too, is going the right way. And I think with their high price point, even though it's a bit crazy, I think they're trying to keep people out of the game to say, look, right now, this is what we're doing. If you really want in, then, you know, it's going to be a premium. But, you know, I wish more people would follow suit and develop like that, because greed kills games. We can see it with any title, whether it's Call of Duty or Battlefield. I mean, plenty of cases where greedy publishers have ruined franchises, and it continues to happen. But the problem is too, is that as a gamer, we have a responsibility to not fund these devs and publishers. We keep buying these things. We keep buying these premium packages. We keep paying for premium time. We keep buying digital deluxe editions and you know, gold vehicles and crazy things for, you know, if we keep giving them money, then they're never going to stop doing this, because they're like, oh, look at Star Citizen. They're selling ships every day and the game's not even out. But you think they're going to stop selling ships? No, because they have millions upon millions of dollars now, because people are still buying into it. So they're, you know, Gaijin, the thing with them is whether they said, well, we want to do planes that actually existed. Well, now we're kind of going to stretch that. Now we're kind of, well, we're releasing this thing because, you know, we got to have more planes to sell, or we got to have more, you know, premium time to sell. Same thing with tanks. They're looking for tanks. and sometimes they're holding back tanks, and they're like, well, we got, okay, look through a book, try to find every kind of tank that you can get, because we need more to sell. If we run out of content, we can't sell anymore, and it's a vicious, you know, cycle. And
but there are a lot of people that also demand this, you know. I mean, it's been said in the chat at the moment. That's why I remember this. You know, the basic example, like the mouse. Like, so many people on the forums, like every week, I think there must be a thread on the forum that says, how about we introduce the mouse? And it's just like, no, we're not going to do that. It's been said so many times, but people keep insisting on these things, and eventually maybe they're going to say, okay, well, we'll put the mouse in, we'll tweak it so that it's maybe not historically accurate and that it can actually be penetrated by things, but we'll put it in there because so many people ask for it. And a lot of the planes that are in the game right now, or that they are being shown off as this will arrive soon, I don't think those were intended. They were maybe on a reserve list or something, but I don't think they were intended at the start when they started producing the game. And it's always these planes that you can just tell that it's for a grab of attention. The Horton 229, for example, yeah. They put it out there and everybody goes crazy. Oh, the stealth plane. It's not a freaking stealth plane, let's be honest. Nowhere in its development was the Horton 229 envisioned as a stealth bomber fighter, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, in the 70s, 80s, the guy who was designing that plane, he said that he thinks that perhaps due to the material they had to use and to the shape of the aircraft, there is some kind of stealth characteristic. But what the Germans wanted for that aircraft was speed. That's why it was called the Free 1000 project. Speed above 1000 kph, range above 1000 kilometers, and bomb load above 1000 kilograms. That's what this plane was about to do. But for everybody, or not for everybody, of course, but for a lot of people, it's like, the stealth bomber has arrived, and so on. And you just have these people saying, oh, this is awesome. And of course, as a developer, you want your business to succeed. You have developers, you have employees, you have to pay these people. You have to feed yourself, of course, as a business. You have artists that you have to pay. You have sound designers you have to pay. And all that stuff, of course, creates a certain amount of pressure on the company and on the CEO and the directors and so on, that, you know, your business has to succeed. And maybe they're not getting enough money. Maybe they can't make the money that they want out of War Thunder, and they will just spam premium content. I mean, when I was in Japan for a couple of days, I was there on holiday. I basically took a step back from War Thunder for a week. I just went on Twitter and I saw this new patch, and I read through the patch notes, and they weren't not really all that exciting. You know, there were a couple of fixes here and there, but there was nothing major. Especially there was nothing major for air combat. Most of it, the stuff was for tanks. But they announced, I think it was 7 or 8 or 9 new premium packages, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It kind of, I guess it makes sense. They need to sell stuff. Of course, it's a business. But then you have these patch notes that are less than adequate, in my opinion. And then you have, yeah, well, buy this stuff. We're not going to fix issues that have been in the game for a year, but buy this. And that just makes me wonder sometimes that it's just not, you know, the priorities aren't right. And they keep saying, well, we have to test stuff. We have to test that. Excuse me, you don't have to test some of the issues that have been in the game for a year, that have been said on the forum so many times. You just have to fix them. And that's what it comes down to. If you don't fix them, problem after problem is going to stack up, and eventually you have a mountain of dog shit, I meant. And you just have to wade through it, and it's going to get worse and worse. And yeah, it would be nice to just see how Gaijin does stuff on the inside, because maybe that could answer a lot of the things that goes on in our minds, like why and how do they do the stuff that they do. But we don't have that insight. They're starting to get a little bit better in sharing information, but I still think they have a long way to go to go to the extent that Wargaming has gone, because Wargaming was bad in the beginning as well when it comes to sharing information, but they have done like a tremendous improvement in that regard, in my opinion.
I mean, they have improved tenfold. I mean, their video production alone, in regards to introducing new content, the developer vlogs with nice translation, very top notch. As much as I can criticize anything that Wargaming has done, or the game in general, I have a lot of respect for how they develop their title. Now, sure, there's been some bias in the early days, but I think a lot of that has been resolved over the years, and a lot of people that still scream bias in that game mostly just don't know where the weak spots on a lot of new tanks are. But beyond that, I think that, yeah, they do need to work on communicating, and they have to leave behind the old school development ways. And I'm for devs making what they want to make and sticking to it, but it is 2014. Game development is changing. Developers have to be, I think, a lot more transparent. And
Yeah.
I've spoken to devs that have said, if I had my own company, I would be very transparent about what we're doing, how we're doing it. And I've seen some, especially the Interstellar Marines developers who I've spoken to recently, they make dev vlogs about everything. Like, oh, look, here's a bug that we ran into, and they'll laugh at it, and they'll say, "Hi, look at this animation broke, and here's how we fixed it." And you know what? It shows that they're just humans, and humans make mistakes. Anything built by man can fail, and I think it has a lot to do with culture. We've talked about how just Russian developers have this, look, you don't tell me how to do my job, how dare you, and now you're blacklisted. Don't you talk, you're out of here. I mean, if you say one bad thing about the game, you're gone. And that's even happened to myself. And I gave them a positive video once because it was just, hey, I was really excited, and then the next time I was like, oh, there's a problem over here, and then I felt like they never spoke to me again. So that I can't respect that. How am I supposed to support that when one day it's like, oh, hey, you want to be on our official live stream, and next day like, oh, we're canceling it, but and then it's like, well, so hey, what's up with that? Hello. I mean, okay, don't respond on Skype or whatever. And it's like that. I can't respect that type of development style. And I think that's part of the problem, that you have to. It's like, look, I don't care where you're from. You have to learn how things are all over the world, because there's some great developer examples out there. There's reasons why certain developers have cult followings, because they know how to treat people. Whether it's business or just their fans. I mean, there's some people that you should listen to. There's some you shouldn't. There's obviously a lot of people that are armchair developers that, shouldn't even open their mouth. But there are some times where there's really educated, paragraphs upon paragraphs of detailed information and statistics and graphs. And sometimes, okay, maybe this guy knows what he's talking about. But you have to know how to choose and balance out where these ideas come from. And I just see a lot of shady business tactics here, and it kind of scares me to the point. It's like, it's to the point where I might even like a large portion of this game, but I almost feel like I don't want to be associated with certain things. It's like, how can I support this shady, development style? Like, how can I tell my viewers to, hey, go play this game, go buy this package? I mean, I would feel like a rotten crook if I did that, and that's why I don't do it. And maybe that's why I don't have every developer's support, because I'm an honest person. I'm not good at lying to people. I can't do it. Everything is not awesome. It's just I got to tell it like it is. And sometimes that's seen as me being closed-minded or cynical, but I call it like I see it, and I think you do as well. And you've been called out for it, Ram JB as well. There's a lot of us.
Ram JB is the perfect example. I mean, he had developer. I would say it was cooperation between them. I mean, as far as I know from Ram, he had talked, as you did also, with the developers, or with some part of Gadget, and has shared ideas with them and how to best engage with the community, maybe even doing some kind of guides for the community and so on. And we all know how Ram is. I mean, Ram, he knows a heck of a lot more on air combat and on planes than me, and he's been doing it basically during the years where I had stayed away from flight sims because, well, it wasn't cool, and I was in my teens and I wanted to do stuff that was cool. He was obviously already flying, and he played all those games that I missed, and
right.
he was very very passionate about War Thunder. I mean, he's Spanish, he has that Mediterranean flair about him, and he just, you know, when he sees something that is wrong, he gets emotional about it, he gets passionate about it, and he just points it out. He basically, he is German in that way. That's what I at least would say, but he would hate me saying that, but that's why I'm going to say it. But yeah, he's German in that way. It's just, you know, he likes to point out stuff that is wrong, and that's a good quality in my opinion. That's how I've been raised. You know, if there's something wrong, you have to point it out and you have to fix it. And I guess it's that the way he pointed it out, of course, made a lot of people, also on the forums, just people of the community, they couldn't deal with how blunt he was telling people this is wrong, and when you do this, when you're engaging this aircraft, then you're simply a fool and you shouldn't do that. And that, of course, doesn't bode well with a lot of people. You know, a lot of people don't like it when they're shown that they've done a mistake. That's human. But yeah, he is the perfect example in that case, because a couple of days after he was thrown out of, I think it was the alpha tester team, and he had lost complete support of the limited support he had at the beginning from Gachin, and somebody else took up. And somebody else who had absolutely no idea back then of what he was getting into. And yeah, well, enough on that topic. But it's like you said, you know, maybe the developers have a different kind of approach to when it comes to developing and community interaction, but they have to realize that this is an international game and that the internet doesn't have any borders, and that you have to make an effort to accommodate the international standard of doing things, or at least try to engage with the international community in a way that is the status quo, let's say. And I don't see them doing that. They have these startup projects where they say, oh, well, we're going to have a dev block here and we're going to show off this and that and that. And sometimes there's some information on that, and it's slowly improving, yes. But they really have to focus on that more. And maybe they've been scared off on the forum, because the forum is a toxic place. I've never been on the World of Tanks forums for a great amount of time, but the War Thunder forums, they scare me. I'm not afraid to admit this. The War Thunder forums actually scare me.
It's hard to find a good. I mean, because I dabble in so many games, Mech Warrior, World of Tanks, you go to any forum, it's always the same. And the funny thing is, the people, a lot of times the people that you're always going to see a lot of people complain. A lot of people that enjoy the game, they don't type anything. A lot of people that play realistic and historical or realism, you know, or simulator, they're not the ones on the forums. They might be lurkers. They don't want to type. They don't want to make a forum account, and so sometimes a lot of us don't have a voice. But and as you were talking, I think there's a way to provide critique as well. You know, because I went to art school for 1 year, and we were taught a lot about critique, how to critique, because you'd have your class where, okay, what was the project for the week? Everybody would come in and you put your art on the wall, and okay, and you go, you know, student by student and say, okay, so what do you think of so-and-so's painting or whatever? And everybody would always be like, oh, it's nice. They were afraid to criticize it in front of the other person. Now, with the internet, it's different, because that other person's not staring you in the face. You could criticize them all you want, and there's no repercussions. So it's the same thing with a game. Like, this stinks, fix it. I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but just fix it. I hate this, blah, blah, blah. I'm safe miles away behind my computer screen. They're going to, you know, so whatever. But, you know, in the class at the time when I went to art school, I was a little older than most people. I went late, and I would always step up and say, you know what? I don't like how this is shaded over here. I don't like the proportions of this figure. I think that the arm is wrong or whatever. And people kind of step back and get quiet. And it's like, oh, you know, like, so, you know, I didn't think he was going to say that. And it's the same thing. And that's why I do the YouTube stuff. I did it as a way to criticize things, but also provide feedback. Because critique is useless if you're not going to give some pointers on how to resolve the issue. And I'm sure that Gaijin gets tired of hearing about, like, look, you guys keep complaining about stuff, but, you know, give us some feedback on how, you know, what do you think's gonna. You can't just say, oh, this stinks, fix it. Well, do you have a solution, hotshot? I mean, I would, if I was a dev, I'm sure that I would probably get sick of it as well if it's not appropriate critique.
But the problem here is also that the people that really cared about the game, they made a post in the beginning explaining the problem in detail, often writing, you know, paragraph after paragraph. RamJB, he was known in the beginning when last year, January, of writing these massive posts. It basically was an essay. And if you paste it into Word, it was probably 4 or 5 pages. And it was just full of stuff. And that's good, you know, that's he maybe went over the top a little bit with his Spanish flair, but that's the kind of stuff that you need to look at and say and filter out, you know, the points where he provides feedback, because he did provide feedback. And a lot of other people, it's not just RamJB, a lot of people that I don't even know, but I read their stuff and it was brilliant. It was well written, it was well researched, they provided sources, they provided pictures, they provided you know, alternatives. And at some point, they don't care anymore because those problems don't get fixed. And then it gets picked up by the whining crowd. And they make a forum post. They don't even care to search for the problem on the forum or the search function. Yeah, the search function is non-existent for them. But they go in the forum, they post in any random kind of forum thread, or they make their own thread in any kind of random sub-forum of the forum. And they just say, display nerf, please. And that's it. They don't provide any kind of information.
And you're going to get spam of that over.
Exactly,
and it's going to bury the well-written feedback. And that's...
Exactly. And the more of that stuff is out there, the less the developers will look on the forum. It's understandable. I don't want, if I was developing a game, I don't want to go to my forum and see every day people just writing 1 or 2 sentences without even going, you know, making the effort of making it legible. And I'm not talking about, you know, there's of course limitations when it comes to language. English is a second language for a lot of people. I have problems explaining stuff in English. You know, instead of saying dog shit here a couple of minutes ago, I said dog pile. That happens, you know. We're second language people. We don't speak English that great. But, you know, some people just don't make the effort of presenting their argument in a legible, nicely presented way, which would really improve their argument, and it would also improve you know, the chances of them being recognized by the developers. Because if I'm a moderator or if I'm a developer and I see somebody saying nerf blah 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 please, sucks gaming blah blah blah, I'm just gonna delete that thread. I would, you know, and you have so many of them on the forum every day popping up. And then you have people on the forum, of course, that also consider themselves to be great experts, and they come into the forum, they say, well, this has to be improved, and the P51 has to be able to do this, because I saw it on a movie called Red Tails, and they will post a 1-minute clip of that movie where P51 blows up a battleship, and it's just like, yeah, look, no, that doesn't work. But if you're a developer, and I'm sure that developers, some of those developers that are doing War Thunder, air combat and tanks, have a great interest in what they're doing, and they're probably sim pilots themselves for years already. And if they see that, they're just gonna be like, no, I'm not gonna listen to you. Go away. I'm not going to even bother with this forum anymore, because they see it every day. And yeah, it just comes down to the fact that some of those issues that have been pointed out by a lot of people for a year already haven't been picked up by Gaijin, and now nobody who has, you know, the interest in providing feedback is there anymore. And I for a lot of problems, I considered it for myself. Maybe I should write a post here. Maybe I should, you know, write a well-written post going through all the problems here, there, and everywhere. Just make it bullet point, make it, you know, easy to understand. But then I'm just like, you know, it's gonna get buried. Nobody's gonna care. And I think if people that want to give criticism, valued criticism, constructive criticism, start to doubt that it will be valued by the developers, I think that's when we have a problem.
I've seen where, and again, I know how hard it can be to receive criticism on a regular basis. When you start a YouTube channel or a live stream and you become somewhat well known, a day wouldn't go by where I'd read the comments on a video, and you know, there's a lot of positive feedback. Generally, I've thankfully had a decent community, but of course, you're always going to get the people that, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Pay attention to your mini map. You could, like, even if you're first place, top damage in a match, Oh, why didn't you do that? You could have still done this. You didn't carry harder, basically. And it's like you can't win. And you get to the point where it beats you up a little bit. It's like, okay, I got pretty thick skin compared to most people. But there's some days it's like, okay, I'm going to go outside now. And just, you just got to, but you have to pick through you have to balance it out. You have to find the right feedback. And it would be like, okay, sometimes you look at a comment and it's like, oh, this is actually a good advice. Oh, I don't know how to do this. Oh, SideStrafe, it's the F key or something, you know? Oh, okay, thank you. Like, and there's some sort of good feedback. I mean, I'll live stream every day, and I've been taught a lot by the viewers. There's some good stuff in there, but then there's some stuff it's like, okay, gotta ignore that one. Yeah. And so I can see it from, like, you know, we can kind of put ourselves in the developer's shoes in regards to, you know, feedback. And it can be tiring sometimes, and maybe sometimes even get you down, but you have to just wade through it. It has to be somebody's job to pick through and find the gold. You know, they have to find the good stuff and just like, okay, get rid of this one and, you know, send this one to the developers, send this to the programming team and say, look, you think we could do this? Oh, I don't know. And then you talk it over and then there it is. But it's, you know, I empathize with a lot of developers because in many cases, I know some, I have friends that are devs and, you know, I can see that it's tough. You know, imagine you're an artist, you sit in your cubicle, you bust your ass on an art asset, a skin, a texture, a model, you release it and then, you know, hundreds of thousands of people see it and they're not happy with something. That's demoralizing. That's painful because...
Absolutely.
So it's the same thing making a video. You spend hours, and a lot of people don't know what goes into it. So I'm not saying Gaijin's perfect, but I do understand trying to deliver the right type of feedback. Whereas, yes, of course, sometimes there's a language barrier, and sometimes people come off as, you know, often I come off as, you know, a gaming Gordon Ramsay, you know, and I'm just beating things up like, you know, do this, standards, you know, and it's... and so
well, I used to be afraid of you, that's true. When I didn't know you, I was afraid of contacting you, that's true.
But I have a certain way that I come off, but I really mean no harm, you know, and sometimes I'm super sarcastic and I'll joke around or I'll pick on people, but it's really in good faith. But it's just the way, that's how we are as human beings, and I think we need to learn how to communicate with each other better and understand where we're coming from. Like, a lot of people like, all you do is complain. All you do is complain in my comments over the years. And it's like, look, you have to understand the difference between complaining and critiquing. If I hated this game, I wouldn't be doing this right now. I wouldn't be,
exactly.
I could be playing any number of other games. I could be talking about anything else. You know, why am I here? Because I'm passionate, because we're passionate, because we love these types of games. We want more of these. We want them to succeed. We're not here because let's jump on the hate train and let's just, you know, let Gaijin have it, you know? I mean,
exactly.
For all we know, there's a Gaijin dev listening to this right now. I mean, waiting to see what we're saying. I don't know, but and in many cases that's true. I can tell you the number of developers that watch content on YouTube and they just say, you know, they don't say anything, and maybe one day they message you like, oh, hey, by the way. But it's, I don't know, it's, you know, there's the right and wrong way to deliver feedback to anybody, whether you're a YouTuber, a streamer, a developer, whatever. However, we're not seeing, I think the problem is we're not necessarily seeing the good stuff accepted by Gaijin in many cases. And we're ending up where it just becomes like, look, where's, and you were talking about selling new packages, like, oh, here's a new plane, here's a new, a couple months ago, they popped out a whole bunch of new premium tanks, you know, that just came out. I was like, holy crap, new tank packages already on sale.
Yeah, that's what I talked about earlier.
And the whole beta buy-in, you know, which a lot of people look down upon. It's like, wait a minute, you know, I did all of these missions to get into beta, but you can just buy your way in, really. I mean, sure, you're buying the tank. The money is going towards the tank. That's what you're technically buying. But a lot of people saw it as, well, no, I want to buy, I don't care about the tank, I just want beta. It's like, well, you got to be, I mean, you should look at yourself with that and say, look, if all I want is beta and I don't care about the tank, you probably should not buy in. You should buy in saying, I want these vehicles. Because then you're telling the developer it's okay to buy your way into a beta test.
Yeah.
And that's whose fault is that? That's the gamer's fault. They
Yeah.
made poor purchasing decisions, and now if we didn't do it, if we didn't give them money for such silly things, betas used to be free. There used to be demos of all these games. I mean,
Exactly.
so it's
I mean,
partially we're to blame as
used to
well.
be it used to be that with a beta, you play the game, you give feedback, and because you give feedback, you have basically early access. But once the game comes out, that doesn't entitle you to anything. In terms of you still have to play the game. At least that's what was my understanding of beta. But it's exactly what you said about being passionate. If you give feedback, if you continue to give feedback, even after a year and a half with a game that has caused you so many nerves, and it's just been a pain sometimes trying to create content because of some of the issues in War Thunder. You're still here. I'm still here. I haven't, I don't want to talk down here on RamJB, but I could have pulled a RamJB and said, fuck it, I'm still here. For some reason in my brain, that's a stubborn little bastard that I am sometimes. I'm still here, and I still want to see War Thunder succeed. I still want to, give feedback to the developers. I don't know if they're listening. I don't know if they want to listen to me. I don't know if I've been blacklisted. I sure as hell have never spoken to any of the developers. So it's just sometimes it's hard. You want this game to succeed, but with every new patch, you just see stuff that you don't understand why it's being put out there. Maybe it's a failure on my part that I don't see the big picture from the developer standpoint. I would love to see that picture. I would love to understand, why are you putting out this and these fixes or these new things, these new content, these new tanks, these new planes now? Why don't you fix the old stuff? Why don't you just do that? And of course we can say, well, that's the business model. They have to put out new content because they need to sell it. But it would just be so good maybe for us to understand what goes on behind that curtain that has really been drawn up by Gaijin when it comes to the game. And again, also what you said about feedback, yeah, it's painful. Of course, it's painful. If you work on something for a couple of hours and then somebody rips it apart within a couple of minutes, that's painful. You can make a video and somebody is just going to post a comment saying, "Thank you, Bismarck," and so on, and you have 20 of those comments. And then there's one guy who just, "Your flying sucks." That's it. And it's just like, well, thanks, I guess. That just destroyed all those 20 comments that were positive. Even if those comments, there were people saying in there, "Look, Bismarck, your flying here and there was a bit shady. You should look at this and that." That's awesome if you point that out to me. If I make a mistake somewhere in my flying, maybe I haven't noticed, maybe I didn't point it out. That's great. That helps me improve, and that also shows me that there are viewers out there that have an active interest in helping me, and they're perfect strangers to me. I have never seen them in my life. I don't know their full name. I don't even know their birthday, and they help me. They say, "This flying here, right there, you made a mistake. You should have pulled this maneuver instead of the maneuver that you did because you made yourself an easy target," and blah blah blah. That's awesome. But then somebody comes in and says, "Your flying sucks." And that's painful. And I think that's the same thing that goes on with Gaijin. There were people that pointed out the mistakes, and they were passionate about pointing it out to the extent that they made huge posts, very detailed. They left because they didn't see any improvement, and now there's a horde of people that just say, "Your game sucks," or they just go to the forum to whine because their own little perfect plane that they saw on some History Channel, the dogfight series, is not as they think. It's not an auto-win thing. They don't take off, press on a button, and it says victory. It's just that really. I think that also gets to the developer, especially if there's, I don't know, a plane artist who just made a model of a yak, and he spent 2 or 3, 4 days optimizing it, looking over blueprints, looking over the dimensions, making sure that everything is 100% correct. And then it gets put out as, "Look what we're going to put into games soon. It's the new Yak, I don't know, 9T. It already exists, but whatever, Yak 9T, it's going to come out." And the first couple of comments you see on the forum is, what the fuck, Russian bias and so on. Excuse me for swearing. But, you know, that must be hurtful for that guy as well, because he put his life and soul into creating a plane model that is 100% historically accurate, considering the blueprints and the dimension that he had available when he made that project. And I guess that's where this animosity started to develop between the community and the developers. And I don't, you know, you can't fault the developers for not venturing on the forums. Maybe I'm sure they have people that send over information from the forum, but I'm not quite sure if they put a big emphasis on what's going on in the forum or what the problems are on the forum. At least I don't feel like they are. Maybe they are. Maybe I'm mistaken here. It's just, I guess they have to make that step. They have to say, okay, there's going to be a lot of bastards on the forum that talk down our work. But we're just going to put up a shield, yeah, and we are going to make a step forward. We're going to reach with all the information that we have. We're going to put it out there, and maybe, and I'm sure of this, things will go better. Yeah, the more information you put out there, the more you tell people about your game, what your ideas are, why are you doing things, the more they will appreciate it. And of course, there's always going to be some turd out there that's going to talk you down. I have a channel that has 10K subscribers. I get people talking me down for some reason. You know, that's the nature of things. That's what you said. You know, they're safe. They wouldn't say it to your face, but they're safe because they're somewhere, I don't know, in the jungle. Writing it there, perfectly safe behind 10,000 mountains and so on. That's how it is. But I think it would be a big step forward if if Gadget proves to be the bigger man and just makes a step forward and says, here's the information, and we are going to share as much as we can from now on. And we're not going to make any kind of differences between the languages. The Russian forum is going to have the same information as the international forum, and it's going to be as much information as we possibly can provide. And I think things will really, really get better that way. Maybe I'm a dreamer, I don't know, but I do think that is how things should be done. And that's also going to improve Gadget's confidence in their community, and maybe it's even going to draw other people that have given up on Warframe back into the game. It's possible. And from now on, I'm going to stop swearing, I guess.
Oh, it's fine. It happens.
Yeah.
You know, it's I live by this: the best revenge is living well. You lead a better life than somebody, you've won. And that's the way. And I'll tell you, I love my life. And I enjoy what I do for a living, and it's fantastic. I couldn't have asked for anything more. And I think that's the way I look at it, and that's the way I think a lot of people need to look at things, developers or whatever. No matter what you do, you have to find the thing that you love and do it. And then when you do it, just do it to the best of your ability. And when it's coming to Gaijin here, be more transparent. Learn from these Western developers that are high. One of my favorite studios, a smaller studio in Georgia, High Res Studios, they make Tribes and Smite.
Yeah.
They hire live streamers. They have in-house, they got a guy and a girl, I think, that live stream right out of the studio. And they go over patch notes live. Oh, okay, guys, here's the new patch notes. I'm going to show you this new character we just put out. But, you know, they talk about the development on a regular basis. They're tweeting, they're Facebooking. They got, you know, the official live streams and sponsoring things. And it's beautiful to see that kind of development. Beautiful, absolutely. And I think it's just one of those things. It's like, look, stop hiding. Stop with the secrets. What are you afraid of? Competition? You're already beat. You're never going to be the Beatles. You're never going to be World of Warcraft. You just need to be your own game and stop being afraid of, like, oh, we can't tell anybody about this bug. Who cares? We're going to find it anyway. You think you're dealing with a bunch of morons? There's some really smart... Everybody's going to school these days for computer science or some sort of game art degree. They know how to find these things. Look how many, all these hackers and, you know, whatever... people fixing games for the developers couldn't even figure out, you know? The guy that added... high frame rates in Dark Souls in like 24 hours or less, you know? I mean, raised the resolution to 1080p. The game shipped at 720. He had it running at like 1080p, and then he came up with a you know, a frame rate fix within like a week or two. I mean, you know, so there's no reason to hide. I mean, and I think that just a lot of these devs have that old school mentality, and I do respect, like, if I talk about Nintendo, they've always been the kind, like, they still believe, like, look, we need to take the time to make this game. It's going to take 2-3 years to do it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You're going to get your Mario or Zelda game in 2, 3, 4 years, whatever, or more than that, because it's like, to them, they live by that old-fashioned, there's no patching, we can't fix it, it just has to be right. They live that old school. Back in the day, you couldn't patch a game. It's like, well, here's the cartridge, we got to ship it. If it's broken, there's nothing we can do. So,
but didn't Nintendo crack down on YouTubers for showing content or something?
See, that's the thing. Well, if you upload a YouTube video featuring Nintendo, it's instantly claimed by them. So, see, on the flip side, but they don't have a balance. Is what I was getting at. Is they maintain their standards. And they do maintain that old world development style where it's like, look, we're going to make it this way because we know that this is the best. They always favor frame rate and gameplay over extra graphics that tank a system. But they're very close-minded when it comes to a lot of other things, especially like free advertising, that is Twitch and YouTube. So, you know, there has to be a balance. And there really does. There has to be a balance to accepting feedback and criticism. And I just don't see why developers are so secretive in this day and age when everything has already been done before. Like, there's just, you know, we don't care that your game is buggy. We just care that you tell us you're going to fix it or that you're working on it. Yeah. We get that bugs happen. We've been around. We understand. You told us that this is beta. We signed an NDA or we signed a piece. Hey, nobody reads it, but we check a box that says, yes, I understand. In there, a lot of times, it's like look at the new DayZ release, DayZ Standalone. It says in a big box, this is alpha or beta or whatever now. It's broken, don't buy it. You know, it says on Steam, don't buy it if you don't want to put up with bugs. You know, I mean, that's honest. Okay, I can't fault you. I can't complain. You said so. That's all you got to do. But we as gamers, too, have to also be respectful and also provide the proper type of criticism and say, okay, I don't like this, but here's how you can fix it. It's like with artillery and respawning in War Thunder, Ground Forces. I said, I don't like that there's respawning in simulator battles. Here's why. Here is the real reason why. Here is why it shouldn't exist, and here's an example of why it's bad. Here's how to fix it. The artillery, here's why it's bad, here's how to fix it. Always provide the solution. If you don't provide a solution, then then you're just complaining. So everybody has a part in this, gamers and developers alike. But are we seeing it happen? No. And I just think that that's why we're talking about this right now instead of just playing it.
Yeah, that's just the key issue here. You know, as individuals on the internet, everybody is an asshole. You know, you go to any forum, and it's been said in the chat as well. You know, any forum is a hostile environment because some people just go out of the way of creating problems. You have people that may write a couple of paragraphs explaining in detail why something is a problem, and you have one guy just jumping into that thread saying you suck. That's it. It's like, you know, why do you even go you know, bother writing those couple of letters because you don't provide any meaningful thing to the discussion, you little turd. You know, it's just that's sometimes you really see that, and that's what I said earlier. I don't really want to repeat it, but you know, I can understand why certain development companies just don't venture out there anymore, because it's such a hostile environment sometimes. But you have to prove to be the bigger man, and you have to, you know, go out there and say, this is the information, here it is, and we're going to give you as much as we can. And if there's 1 or 2 or 3 or even 100 people on the forum that are going to talk us down, our moderators will fix it up. And you know, they're on the Gadget forum, some of the moderators, they're fine, but then they had some disgraceful choices as well. But I don't want to go into that because, you know, that's something entirely. But I'm going to post a thread of the forum, something that's been posted today, actually yesterday, but it's been, you know, a couple of more parts are going to be added as time goes by, and it's a thread basically where they explain some of the problems that they run into, and you know, it's called In the Near Future Sneak Peek. So I guess people can just look at that if they want to. And there are some parts down there as well, and there they explain some things there are actually explained quite nicely, right? You know, why is this not working, or why is that not working? I think there's one about the damage model where certain components of the tanks in the model were somehow outside of the tank, and as such they were easier to penetrate or easier to damage, even though the round actually didn't penetrate the tank, and so on. You know, that's the stuff you want to see, but you have to be consistent with this kind of stuff. And you know, it's that consistency that Gaijin is lacking, but maybe this is the first attempt of regaining that, you know, that information provision to the community, and that they will stay with it. And I really hope they will stay with it.
Well, they said a while ago, don't worry, we're going to get really a lot better at dealing with the community and providing information. That's what they've said on Reddit. They said it on Reddit, and I think they are starting to understand the importance. I mean, because how can you not when your #1 competitor is doing it? You know, dev vlogs and all these things. You have to. I understand that there's sometimes a language barrier, but guess what? You got to put aside some money to hire a translator and a community manager for each region, and communicate those things, or somebody that's gonna, you know, do that. I mean, Wargaming's the perfect example. They've done it right in that respect. Their videos are very well done, and they get the guy translating it and everything, and I mean, they spend a fortune on that stuff because I think they understand the value, the importance. And again, you know, working with YouTubers, which they've tried to, but you know, there are mixed results in doing that, or there have been, and perhaps in some cases they haven't necessarily worked with the right individuals, but it's one of those things where if they don't communicate what their problems are, then how can we resolve anything too? Yeah. So it goes. But
it's just like with Wargaming, I can see why Gaijin doesn't want to, you know, engage with Wargaming, even in the way of learning from them, because they're direct competitors. But you really should look at Wargaming and see, because they've been on the market for some time, and you can really learn from them. They've made mistakes. They've made some big mistakes with their game development and with their information sharing. And you have to look at that and say, we're going to avoid that. And when, you know, I don't know if everybody knows this, but War Thunder actually is called War Thunder because Wargaming sued Gaijin for the initial name, which was, I think, World of Planes or something. Back then, World of Warplanes hadn't been announced yet or trademarked yet, but it was really weird. But Wargaming somehow won the case. And that's how War Thunder, the name War Thunder, was born. You know, so maybe there's a grudge there, but you still have to look at what Wargaming does. And I'm not going to say that Wargaming is the example, you know, the almighty company that has done everything. I think I use them
because they're the direct competitor, and yes. I follow what they do on YouTube, and you know, I see the, you know, so are they the best example? No, but in regards to a vehicle-based franchise, they're one to sort of keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, you have to keep an eye on them, and you have to learn from them. If you like them or not, doesn't really matter. And they've made mistakes. I mean, Wargaming rushing out their air combat is atrocious. I mean, okay, I can't speak of a first-person experience here because I've never played it, but I've seen it, and oh my god, I don't even want to touch it with a stick. Maybe they're going to improve it at some point, but I don't think so. And they rushed it out, and they wanted to bring it out as fast as possible so that War Thunder isn't that big of a, you know, people don't go over to War Thunder and leave World of Tanks. And that was a mistake by Wargaming. Absolutely. I think that was one of the major mistakes they've made in the past couple of years, rushing out World of Warplanes. But then you have War Thunder and Gaijin rushing out the tanks when they were not ready. They weren't ready to be put into open beta or whatever. And they still rushed it out, and there are so many problems. And then you had that NDA that did not permit you to show off any kind of problems with the game. on YouTube, for example, and you had to cut that out of your videos. You know, there were videos where you had a perfectly nice game, but suddenly there's a tank flying through the air or just hovering somewhere on a mountain, and you're just like, I can't show this because there's a tank hovering up on a mountain. And even though the game was good, you know, I had a good game, I had some great examples of how I can flank the enemy and so on. I can't use it because there's that bloody tank hovering on a mountain, which basically happened to me. So it's just, you know, you rushed out tanks, and there are so many problems with it, and I think it has hurt Gaijin. A lot of people jumped on tanks saying, oh, this is going to be, you know, better graphics than World of Tanks, more realistic, this is what we wanted. And then they got a buggy game, a broken game, that is slowly getting fixed. You know, we don't have to shy away from that reality. It is slowly getting fixed. They're bringing fix after fix after fix. And in that link that I posted earlier, they talk a lot about tanks as well, and the problems they run into with damage models and so on. And they're fixing it, but it was rushed out too early into that open beta where everybody can join. And I mean, it's not even beta anymore. Who are we kidding? It's not beta. It's in a state where you could consider it beta, but if they, you know, they have an in-game shop, so it's not a beta. But yeah,
Well,
that's just go ahead. I'm talking too much.
No, well, it's good. You can see how passionate we are about this subject, but it's War Thunder had the head start when it came to aircraft, and I remember when this was out, people were like, "You got it." I mean, check this out. What do you think? Let it, you know, a lot of people wanted my opinion on it, but I was just like, you know, like I said at the beginning of the cast, it was just, I'm just not that into planes. But everybody was like, World of Warplanes, what? You know, War Thunder had them beat, and in many cases still does, because now it's funny because people for some reason could accept hit points in tanks, but they could not accept it in the sky. Like, wait, these planes have hit points, but they do in the tanks too. So how come you can accept it here but not there? For some reason, psychologically, it was just not something that they could compute. It's like, no, I can't accept that, because not really ever has there. I never really played flight sims that had hit points on a plane unless it was some sort of console like arcade game or something, I guess. But it's just maybe one doesn't, you know, come to mind. But
well, maybe no visual hit points, you know.
And it's just, yeah, I mean, maybe they're there, but they're hidden. But I don't know. Exactly. And in some cases, people were saying in this game's beta, is like, well, you know, with the tanks, this feels like there's invisible hit points, because before I could one-shot this guy, and now I'm having to hit him in the same spot, you know, 3 times before he explodes. And so people were starting to get confused, and there just wasn't enough information. But they had that head start in planes.
Yes.
And I think they got cocky. They're like, well, we got the ultimate plane, you know, flight sim here. You know, there's no competition. They can't fight us. And today, how many people, I think the only people that are playing World of Warplanes, and again, no offense if anybody likes it, but I feel like the people that are really loyal to wargaming are the only ones that are, because they know that their accounts are universal. Like, okay, my gold is linked in tanks and in planes and eventually ships. And so for them, it's like, well, everything's in one account. All my games are together. This is convenient. I love wargaming, and, you know, they can do no wrong. And, you know, so I'm going to support their planes. I don't care. I like it. And so they stick with it. But the other people are like, you know, these aren't planes. So they go to War Thunder, and then maybe they graduate from arcade and then they turn into people like us. But
yeah.
I mean, so they had it in the bag, but now it's like, they're kind of reverting to making decisions based on just selling premiums, and there's a time where, like, and again, we don't know how much money they make. We don't know, are they able to survive off of what they're making? At what point do you hit the roof of greed? And it's like, okay,
well, they have a lot of projects as well, a lot of side projects with different games for, you know, Xbox, PS4, and so on. So I really don't know.
But now are they spreading themselves? They're spreading themselves too thin. You know, that's how you lose a war, so to speak. I mean, that you gotta like, okay, maybe we shouldn't work on a console version if we're still having problems here. You know, I mean, maybe we shouldn't make, you know, I mean, like, wargaming's at the point, it's like, okay, we can make a mobile game because we have this much money. We have 5 teams under our belt. I mean, Gaijin also has that Star Conflict game, I guess, that
that goes nowhere.
I mean, I tried it once. I didn't like it. It didn't feel right. I don't know, you know, if it's popular, but you know, it's a separate department, I'm sure, works on that. But you've got the planes team, you've got the tanks team, I'm sure, you've got the Star Conflict division. I don't know what else are they working on. I mean,
there's Birds of Steel for PS4, Xbox 360.
Whew.
There's if you go on their company website, they have a lot of games lined up. A lot of them, you know, having to do with combat.
You know, I play a variety of games. That's just in my nature. I get tired of a game, I go to the next one. It shows in my channel, obviously. But generally, I focus on a genre. I try to, okay, typically you can see I like stuff that revolve around military or warfare tactics, whether it's science fiction or you know, World War II or whatever. Sometimes I'll dabble in fantasy, but I try not to. I've tried, you know, even as a YouTuber, I've found that me covering all kinds of content hasn't really worked out for me. Being honest here, me making a video about WildStar, not many people watch it. You know, it's not going to get as many views. Why? Because most of my subs come from World of Tanks or War Thunder or maybe DayZ. You know, so it's once you spread out of that, you hurt yourself. I've done it, and developers are going to do the same thing. You spread out too much, you're going to hurt yourself. You're not going to get as many subscribers. You're not going to get as many customers, paying customers. It's difficult unless you were there in the beginning and you run a monopoly or you own just that space. You know, it's hard, but
yeah.
I think now they need to look at focusing. They say, okay, let's stop releasing planes. We have enough. Like, how much more are they in the negative? Are they in the red? I mean, we don't have this information. Can they afford to not make new planes for the next 6 months and just tweak the game and fix the tanks, fix the fine. If they told me, look, we can either polish these tanks that we have now or get the Americans out in the next 2 months or something, I'd say polish. I'll wait. I'm dying to play American tanks in this game, but I will wait 6 months to a year if you told me, or even longer, if you told me we're going to have this done right, we guarantee it. I'd be fine with that, but I think there's a lot of people that aren't fine with that.
Yeah.
They're like, we want new content now. I'm getting bored. I want new stuff. And this happens in every free-to-play I see. We don't. Oh, you're not gonna give me new stuff? I'm out. Because people don't have standards. They don't want things to be polished. They just want more candy. I'm not full. I want more candy. I want yummy in my tummy.
That's
what it comes down to.
Pressure, yeah. There's definitely that pressure on the developers of providing new content, and especially, I mean, there's some tech trees in War Thunder that really need new planes, and those are not specifically the tech trees that get those new planes. And I can understand, you know, they can bring out new content, but they can also focus that content on planes that they already have a model for, and they only have to tweak that model when it comes to the plane's looks. Yeah, for example, you basic example I can give here is a Zero, for example. There's the A6M3. There is one model that has the normal shaped wing, and then there's a model that has the wing slightly cut off. And you know, those visual tweaks are easy, and then you make the flight model to it, and you can make those adjustments fairly easily. And they can focus on these kind of aircraft when they want to bring out new stuff. But then, of course, there are these big projects like the Horton 229 and well, I don't know, the IL-28. And those are the things that a lot of people crave for because it's special, it's shiny, it's awesome, it's something that hasn't been there before. And I can definitely see why the developers want to bring out that content, because they want to keep them engaged. Because as you said, you know, if they would say for the next 6 months we won't bring out new content, we will fix our game, I would be the first one to buy new premium time and premium planes. I would just say, have my money, I'm going to support you. But you know, they don't do that. And also, if they said it at the moment, I wouldn't trust them per se. For this given amount of time, I first want to see that they're actually doing it. But that's not how it's going to happen. That's a fantasy, because most people will say, no, that we're not going to stick around. Even though there's no alternative, they're not going to stick around. They're going to go back to War Thunder, they're just going to drop the game altogether. I mean, people have dropped the game already because their favorite aircraft was changed to be more historically accurate, and they didn't like it anymore because it went against everything they learned from the History Channel. And they've left. I know a couple of cases of that. So it's just, you know, what do you do as a developer in that case? You know, you can fix your game, of course, and Gaijin knows there are problems. But at the same time, they have that pressure of you know, capitalism. They have to make money. They just can't live off bread and water all the time.
Well, of course, there's
And
always you're always going to have somebody that's in charge or the owner of a company that says, "Look, my paycheck was a little light last year. What are you going to do about it?" Even though
yeah,
you know they're probably making enough for 7 families. I mean, it does come down to business decisions. We know that. I'm not that dumb. I understand that at the end of the day, they have to do what's going to make them more money. And they're looking at, and let's face it, the most successful companies in many cases are stingy, greedy, scum of the earth. I mean, let's look at EA, Ubisoft. I mean, come on. How many franchises have they destroyed over the years? I mean, that's just the way it is. But they're successful. They're making tons of money. And again, it's because it's partially our fault, you know, for continuing to buy into these things. But you know, it's not going to be. We're not going to have a mass exodus of people saying enough's enough. We're not buying into this anymore. You would hope that would happen, but it's all you know for, I guess.
Hoping, I guess, what you mean is like we would hope that there is a statement by the community saying we don't take the shit anymore. Because I don't hope that people, you know, leave the game, but I hope that there is a statement from the community that says we don't take the shit anymore. We want fixes. At least that's what I would say.
Yeah, again, unfortunately though, you're not going to get that because there's always going to be somebody to buy some outrageously priced thing. Yes. I mean. And the developers, they put something out as a test, like, well, let's put out this expensive premium item here. Let's see how many people bite. Oh, shocking! Thousands of people bought this thing and then, like, there's thousands complaining, like, how dare you? This is insulting. But then it's like, well, we sold, a couple hundred or a few thousand of these things, digital items. Like, they sold air. I mean, they basically put a price on oxygen. And you know, okay, development time, a model, a skin, an animation, a sound. You know, there's people so talented, they can do that in their sleep within like 2 weeks. You know, and it's, but the price for that, and then multiplied, and at this point, there's too much pressure.
War Thunder, they have talented people. Back when Lemsko was still working, I don't know if anybody here from the viewers knows Lemsko. He's somebody who also has a YouTube channel. He hasn't posted anything on War Thunder for some time, and I don't think he will. But he used to play aerial combat sims since I guess the time when I was maybe born or something. He knows his stuff, and he also worked on various air combat flight simulators. You know, he made models for them. He designed aircrafts for them. I think his specialty is the MC-202. He knows a great deal about flight models as well, just from his experience, damage models, and so on. And he left as well because it just wasn't going the way. You know, him being treated by Gaijin and so on. But I even forgot what kind of point I wanted to make now. And it's just with War Thunder, it's you have these people that I remember now. You have these people that are talented, and he told me. When I said at one point, you know, I had this knee-jerk reaction when I saw one of the patch notes. I was like, do these developers even know anything that they're doing? And he told me straight up, he said, like, yes, they do. Some of the corrections that I told them for plain models, not the flight models, but the actual physical model, based on the information that I have and the blueprints that I have and so on. They were done within a day. You know, they would send it back to me and it was done within a day. They have talented people that know how to work for deadlines and so on. So, you know, they have the manpower, but I guess, yeah, they're stretching themselves a bit too thin there. And just before around that it's something that I remembered earlier when you were talking about, you know, the power and the head start that War Thunder had in air combat. When War Thunder started to make, you know, their game more available for more people, of course, wargaming started to bring World of Warplanes out there as fast as possible. On the official trailer, Wargaming had to turn off comments on the World of Warplanes trailer because people were telling other people, "Don't play this game. Go to War Thunder." Because World of Warplanes is horrible, it was horrible, and will always be horrible if they continue the line they have at the moment. And that was the head start and the power that War Thunder had, the impact that people would go to that trailer and say, this game is horrible, go to War Thunder, it's so much better, it has everything that you see here, but it does it 10 times better. But then they kind of lost that somewhere. And I don't know where they lost it, but it must be somewhere between trying to provide content, trying to get fixes, trying to prioritize various things in the business and development model that I don't understand. And I would love to understand, but I think
it just comes down to human greed, though. They saw the success, and then they went further, where they tried to... I think if you try to take somebody's community away, then there's a problem. Like if you try to go in and say, oh, well, okay, their game is not doing so hot, let's take from them. How can we get those people? You shouldn't even worry about that. Build it and they will come. Build the right product, and you're gonna. They already had the attention for planes, and then I think then it just came down to, well, how do we get more and more and more? And sure, you could say that's a good businessman, but is that a good person? Is that a good human being? Like, it's just there are some things where you just gotta, like, okay, here's what we're good at, let's keep doing this, and then people will flock to it. Because let's face it, flight simulators on PC have been stagnant or dead for many years. It's just not a thing anymore. Publishers shy away from it. A lot of people, even for example, MechWarrior Online. MechWarrior Online is a free-to-play game because publishers told them, look, nobody wants a MechWarrior game anymore. Nobody wants a single-player MechWarrior game. If you make it multiplayer, free-to-play, then we'll talk. That's and so, the game that was supposed to be created didn't really get created because nobody would let them. And this was before Kickstarter really, I think, was a big thing. So luckily, we do have crowdfunding, so sometimes you can get that type of... But still, even in crowdfunding, nobody has stepped up with a vehicle solution. So... sure, I even thought about trying to do that. I said, look, let me kickstart something. Let me do something my way. But the logistics that go into finding developers, oh my goodness, it's a nightmare. So it's just, and then there's mods maybe you can jump into, but it's tough. So you really can't win, and you can only hope that the devs that are on track to something just stick with it. But I think, at the end of the day, there could be 100 developers at Gaijin that are like, what are we doing? You want me to do what? And then there's some guy at the top sitting behind his desk, his golden throne, that's just, I need you to make me some more, I need some more bonus, and what are you going to do for me? It's like, so, you don't know who's calling the shots. I mean, it could be some guy that's it's not even a gamer. He's got his, his tie, and he's just petting his white fluffy cat. He's some Bond villain. I don't know. I mean, so I think at this point they just need to go back to what got them to this level of success, because they could do, I don't know, they could really carve. They can make a name for themselves even more than they already have. I mean, it's not like there's this is not the worst game on the planet. It's really it's really darn good. It really is. It's just, we do get spoiled to a certain extent. We do want more out of it. We see the potential, but it's just, go back to where you started. Look at your roots, Gaijin. And this is advice for any developer, because we could apply what we've been speaking about today to a wide variety of developers easily. I see these mistakes made over and over and over again, especially in the free-to-play market. That's where it's the worst, because they can't figure out how to balance the free content and the paid content, and there are very few developers that come up with good strategies in regards to monetization. So there are some things we see them improving. For example, in the last in the notes that you showed me today, they said they were looking at removing the hover cam from field artillery call-ins for tanks.
I'm just gonna post that again for people that joined.
That's a fix. That's something we were saying. Hey, this is ridiculous. So you can look over a mountain in a tank, and we provided solutions, and now it is apparently being addressed. How they're going to do it, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to take some of the suggestions, but that's one thing that's positive. You know, if they decide to work on the respawn issues, especially, I would prefer that there's no respawning in realistic and sim. I would at least be happy if they got rid of it from sim. I know some people are a little bit more stubborn about still wanting it in realistic, but it didn't exist for air combat. Why should it exist for, you know, tanks? And people are going to argue about it till their face turns blue. But, you know, I've given reasons in videos before about why it shouldn't exist and why it's terrible. But, you know, if they're starting to listen, then fine, cool, awesome. That's all, you know, those little things, because you have 3 modes. 3 modes. They should be different. Not, well, this mode's kind of like this mode except without name tags. Well, you know, I mean, no. Why have a whole mode where you're segregating the community? You fractured your community into 3 places. Sure, if it was my game, there would be 1 mode. And it's like, okay, it's a realistic battle mode. World War II combat simulation in armored vehicles and planes. You don't, I mean, I'm sorry if you don't like this, but this is what we're doing. If, you know, this is the budget we have. This is what we want to do. This is what we're passionate about. This project was crowdfunded. You don't like it? Well, there are these other games. No hard feelings. I don't, you know, I'm not going to cry about it, you know, if I lose, you know, some people over the fact that I didn't increase movement speed or that I didn't increase respawn times. And, you know, it's like, look, this is the way, this is what we've envisioned. This is what we're sticking to. I want more devs like that, you know? Sure. Need some feedback? Oh, we got this wrong. Let me check your data. Let me double check that. Okay, fine. That's fine. We're not perfect, but we don't have that. That's all we're asking for, is just keep developers to keep an open mind, accept the feedback, run the data, keep the modes separate. Simulator battle modes, it should be a simulation. One day, I dream of a tank game where I have a complete tank interior. Part of me would love to have multi-crew, but multi-crew and multiplayer with public games does not work. So at least give me some sort of interior where I can, you know, at least something like, you know, Red Orchestra was amazing, but, you know, again, there's issues with multi-crewing. But you know, even Battlefield, if I have to have Battlefield's perspective of being able to control a tank by myself, but yeah, I would love an interior. I would love no respawns. I would love historical objectives, nice maps that match actual, you know, battles, you know, from World War II, you know, nice objectives that make sense, not just a circle somewhere that I got to go sit in and capture something, you know, and realistic ballistics, you know, if a tank was bad, then it was bad. Don't make it any better if it wasn't, you know, if this shell goes through this tank from this many, you know, then that's that. I'm going to accept that as an adult. I'm gonna be like, okay, this tank, it had these issues. Well, how do I defeat that? Well, you defeat it like they did in World War II. Flank around. Don't engage from range. Hit the weak spot, you know? Take some time. Be patient. Learn tactics. I think then it's up to us to learn how to play the game.
Yeah.
And, so yeah.
Yeah, it's just...
We are obviously rambling on, but that's what I do in strafing runs, and I'm glad to see that Bismarck is as an ally in ranting about things that we're passionate about. This has obviously gone on for quite some time, and I would eventually like to get this out to YouTube as well. So we might have to start to cut this short. But you know, at the end of the day, I think, you know, we can kind of sum up with the fact that, you know, we love these games and we want them to succeed. I don't ever say, I wish War Thunder would fail. No. I want it to be fantastic. I want more options. I want to be able to say, you know, today I feel like playing World of Tanks. Tomorrow, I think I'm going to play War Thunder. I love to have choices. It's just right now, I don't. I don't have that many things to jump between, or I'll run into something. It's like, look, me jumping into a game and fighting 5 players and the rest being bots, that's not my idea of a good time. I don't want to deal with bots. I want to fight real people. That's what's challenging to me. You know, so it's like, why I can't keep, and I have to deal with a community that's like, SideStrafe, why aren't you playing this game? Why aren't you filming this? Well, because I'm frustrated. So I can't have fun, and if I pretend to, then I'm lying to you. So I'm not gonna play a game if I'm not actually having fun, because then I'm a liar, and then I'm just like every other YouTuber. You know, not every other. Obviously, there's some great ones out there, but generally there's a lot of phonies out there, and I'm not gonna be one of them. So I'm gonna play what's enjoyable to me. If you're not enjoying that, then just don't watch it. So it's the same thing in that regard. You know, it's just I want more choices. I want more games to be great so that I can cover them and share my experiences and what tactics I do have with the community. And I think you feel the exact same.
Yeah, I mean, I would, you know, both of them, they don't have to do exactly what I think should be done, because, you know, that's not going to happen. That's unrealistic, and it's also not something that I can, you know, I'm not in a position where I can say you have to do exactly what I want with this game. That, you know, thinking in that kind of lines, that's preposterous in my opinion. But you have these different modes, and you can make a clear distinction with them, and you should keep with that distinction, and you should try to put an equal emphasis, or at least put an emphasis on all game modes to the point where there's continuous development of that game mode. If you develop arcade mode and realistic battle more than simulator battle, that's fine. I can understand the harsh reality that simulator battle it's you know, the numbers aren't there, and of course because of that it's simply not that important. But I would like to see continuous improvement there, just as a token that you say we still, you know, we realize there are problems there and we're working on those problems. And you know, you have one or two developers that work on that, one or two programmers, and you just put them on there, you make them dedicated simulator battle the programmers, and then you have a couple of others who are for realistic battle, and maybe even a whole team for arcade, and you make continuous improvements on those game modes, and you deal with the problems, the visual problems that you perceive immediately when you play that mode. You start with those and you work them off one after the other. And if you want to bring out content at the same time, you know, that's just how it's going to be. That's economics for you. But yeah, at the end of the day, I want War Thunder to succeed, and I wish them all the best in their development process. And you know, they're probably going through a lot of shit as well. They have to make a checkbook. They have to engage with parts of the community which are, I already swore too much on this podcast, so I'm just gonna say which aren't, you know, the people that you might want to hang out with if you had a choice. So yeah, I can see the problems that they have, but they could just prove to be the bigger man and put all that information out there, dedicate themselves to fixing instead of content. You know, bring out content if you have to, but don't focus on it so much. And if you have a dev blog saying, look, we're bringing out this new plane, then also have a dev blog about saying, oh, look at these problems that we found today, and based on your feedback on the forum, we've made plans to make adjustments for the next patch that go along these and these lines. And that would be great. But, you know, at the end of the day, War Thunder, I want you to succeed. You know, sometimes when I play you, you're an absolute beauty, and I could kiss, you know, my screen if I wouldn't put a big, massive, wet outline there and I couldn't see the enemy anymore. But so many times I'm just, you know, you could be it, and, you know, please just be it instead of just, you know, having the potential of being it. But yeah, that's all I can say after I don't know how many hours that we've been doing this now.
Yeah, I just wonder how long you know, people will listen to it. And I'm actually grateful that we've had quite a few people listening to us. You know, again, this is something that we're just very passionate about. Otherwise, there's no reason to do this. You know, we love video games. We enjoy realistic simulations in games, and we don't feel like we have enough, and we're trying to fight for more of that. That's it. I mean, we just want a small slice of the pie there in this game. There's already the modes there for it. We just want them to stay true to what their original vision was. And you know, this whole kind of Strafing Run podcast thing, again, test bed, lots of things that I can work on again, and of course that's what the chat's for, you know, open-minded, you know, open to criticism and critique. You know, some of you have said, we'd like to see webcams or something else like that. Obviously, this was just kind of a test. Have the, you know, War Thunder in the background, a little bit of music maybe, but in the future, I don't do webcams for gameplay videos, but webcams for a podcast style thing, that's acceptable to me because you're not blocking anything. So, you know, who knows, that could be an option in the future. And of course, wouldn't mind doing more of these if, you know, if you think that this was an interesting experiment, or if you've enjoyed listening to me and Biz rant and rave for the past few hours here, then you know, let us know. Definitely would not mind having Bismarck back for more of these because, you know, we like games in general. So
I try not to swear next time.
You know, the funny thing is people think that I have a huge issue with swearing. I really, it's more so it's just my thing. When I start filming or streaming, I flick a switch and I'm like, you know, everything that's a swear turns into something else, you know, and I honestly don't have a huge issue with people doing it unless it's just, okay, can you form a proper sentence at some point without, you know, having to swear through it, which in some cases a lot of people just can't formulate words, so they resort to swear. But honestly, it doesn't bother me as much as most people think. I do plenty of it, you know, behind the scenes. It's just when it's film time, there's a light switch that's hit, so it's not a big deal at all, trust me.
Well, the thing is, I usually don't swear at all.
No, I know, but it's just
it's just
hey,
sometimes
in fits of passion. It's no big deal.
Yeah, it's a knee-jerk reaction, and yeah, that's just how it is.
No worries.
Ooh, how long have we been talking now?
Probably too long, considering yeah, it's probably been over 2 hours, if not longer than that. So yeah, it's I think 2 hour mark maybe. I don't know. I gotta check. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure there's plenty of things we didn't even get to cover, but I think that's at least phase 1 and 2 of our War Thunder discussion. I'm sure there's more that we can keep up with, and again, I definitely like to do more of these. I think it's a good way to keep people up to date and posted with what we're thinking. So we'll cut it here. Thank you so very much for joining us. Look forward to more strafing runs and live streams and channel updates. Please check out Bismarck's YouTube channel. If you could post your channel link in the chat.
Yes, I shall do so.
For me. He just hit 10,000 subscribers, and again, it's one of those things where he deserves more, and that's, I seriously mean that. I'm not just, you know, saying that. I visited his channel long ago, and I just, to see videos that I can just look at, listen to, and learn from, you know, educational, entertaining, fun. It's hard to find this content, and I feel like the wrong people are getting attention on YouTube these days, and it's just, please, you know, definitely check out his channel and a variety of other channels that I tend to recommend on a regular basis, because I don't sub to a lot of people. My subscription list is very small because I'm that picky. So, you know, I wouldn't tell you to go there if I didn't truly mean it. I'd like to do some sort of 10,000. I'd like to help you out some sort of 10K event if you want, but I know you already had your one celebration.
Yes.
But if you want to do
Brazil,
something else,
I'm sorry. That was my celebration.
Yeah, I know. If you want to do another one, hey, let me know. We could set something up. But other than that, it is what it is. Please check them out.
Thank you very much.
So, all right, guys, we're out of here. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll definitely see you on the next one.